Yeah. Oh, hi, Mike. I was supposed to be in the recording studio today with a rock band, or uh, steel guitar and drums and congas, electric bass, electric guitar, rhythm guitar. Anyway, some tune called Anyhow we're recording. They wanted me to play the horns for it. Actually, it's a very typical kind of horn-bound sound at the back, but yeah, something about organization. The singers from Prague and something about that. And so it's not happening. So I asked Mike to come here to just check into you guys. In 3 days, my renta begins. As a matter of fact, I just got this. It says here, I go into what they call retirement, which means they give me money for nothing and they get the chicks for free. No, that's dire straits. What actually happens is that I get paid a monthly thing, 2 different pensions, and 2 from Canada also, which is kind of cool. So, as I said before, I don't make these YouTubes because I want you to pay me money or do anything like that. I think probably Mark Zuckerberg, because he owns YouTube, probably is making money anyway, scumsucker. But that's just the way things are in this world. And anyway, so starting in 3 days, the 1st of December, it's now the 28th of the 11th month, 28th of November. You and I think, Mike, we started these on the 17th of November a year ago. So it's basically a year of YouTubes that I've been doing. And the whole idea was sort of not to get too bored during this COVID time and to try to be productive and see about what direction I'm going to go in. The nice thing about getting a pension in Germany is that as soon as you start to get it, you have no strings attached. You can do all kinds of other work besides. So my thoughts about buying a boat in the Adria and one on Vancouver Island still are not going to go away, but I'm going to keep my studio here. Can you pan around the studio just this way? Not necessarily where all the other things are. I see I've got a lot of things going on here, and sometimes I have musicians come by, but, you know, in Germany, if you don't get paid, they don't come to even rehearse these days, you know. So it's not like what I wanted was just a studio where, you know, people would just drop in, come by, you know, jam sessions all the time. But when I started the jazz Abteilung here in the jazz department in '83, my idea was to get my students to have a broad spectrum education. They don't really understand that in Germany. Everything has to be compartmentalized. You either study jazz, or you study classic, or you study Baroque, or whatever. And they got all these specialists that think they're specialists, but they're usually not. They're just somebody that have closed their minds to learning things in other genres. I'm not that at all. When I came from Canada here, I was surprised to find that people that sit in a symphony orchestra can't play show music. And so I used to do tours with Konstantin Wecker, who was a pretty famous guy here, and did film music with Munich Philharmonic. Because you have to play different styles when you have film music. I worked with a guy named Hans Zimmer, who's pretty famous in Los Angeles these days. He did a lot of really great film music. For As Good As It Gets, for example, just one example of my favorite film. And actually, he told me once that the name As Good As It Gets is his suggestion. They wanted to call it something completely different. But there's this one scene where Jack Nicholson comes out of the psychiatrist's office and he turns to the people in the waiting room and says, "What if this is as good as it gets?" And everybody goes, "What?" Yeah, what if this is as good as it gets? Well, I'm telling you, this is as good as it gets. You go in your pension. I got this big old Mercedes-Benz that it's got H license plates. It's ready for me. Fixed it up just yesterday, which means that it's a historical car, so I pay very little taxes for it. Gas is expensive enough for an 8-cylinder, 5-liter motor, 500 SEL, fantastic. It's the 1991. So I'm going to be traveling around a lot in Europe. I'm going to make it down to Italy. It's a great car for the Autobahn, you know. You cruise at 200, you don't even know what's going on. 200 kilometers an hour, which is about 130 miles an hour, I guess, 140 miles an hour. So it's just a wonderful feeling about, you know, in Germany at least, because there's no speed limits. But traveling around, that was what I would like to do. And when I first came to Germany in 1978, I was playing in the World Youth Orchestra as the solo trumpet, and it was a summer course, basically, supported by the Canadian government. Actually, the Canada Council played for it, the Canadian government. They started this. It's called Jeunesse Musicale, Orchestre du Mondial. That's as much French as I've ever spoken in my life. But more than that, what I wanted to say is that it was a wonderful experience, and then I decided to stay on. At the time, I had a wife and child, and she promised me when I got a job over here that she would come over. But she had other plans and didn't tell me about it, and I took the job, and I gave back my Canada Council grant and took a job in an opera orchestra in Dusseldorf. And I didn't know anything about opera, and I really personally didn't particularly like opera. And the show's not over until the fat lady sings, is what they used to say all the time. But I enjoy opera very much. I did a lot of ballet and did a lot of symphony orchestra in Dusseldorf. And when I was there, I was playing in the extra in the Frankfurt Radio Orchestra for a later colleague on the Hochschule. His name is Helmut Erb. But anyway, to get back to what I was saying, Mike, because Mike's behind the camera, he's the only guy that's listening to all this. Now I'm you know, they call it Durchstarten in Germany, like, you know, it's when you fly down and then take off again, like when you're training flying jets on aircraft carriers, touch and go, touch and go. You start and fly through anyway. So that's my plan right now, to fly through and to keep on. I'm gonna keep this studio. I like it very much. I just don't like it being in Germany because the people are very small-minded and very. Not everyone. Mike isn't that way. Thanks, Mike. But most of them are, because they're brought up to be much too competitive. And therefore, they don't appreciate other people's abilities. That was the problem with Mr. Erb, for example. He never had the respect. Maybe he didn't get the respect he expected for himself from other people. I had no problem with the guy. But when I played extra in the Hessische Rundfunk, in the radio, it was actually for him that I was playing for. He was doing some other job, but I noticed that as soon as I became pretty well, was popular in that orchestra doing there, he all of a sudden showed up again and was free again to do some of the things. We were doing the Soldier's Tale, I think it was. And during the time as we were doing the Soldier's Tale from Stravinsky, the concertmaster took me to a concert in a place called Bad Godesberg, which is by Bonn. And the Bamberg Symphony Orchestra was playing there. And at that time, this man here was the solo trombonist in the Bamberg Symphony Orchestra. His name is Enrique Crespo. And Diego was the concertmaster. He's a Spanish concertmaster, and he introduced me to Enrique Crespo because he said that he knew Crespo, and they were looking for a new trumpet, solo trumpet for the Bamberg Symphony Orchestra. And this man here was the solo horn, is Wolfgang Gag. And I went to this concert and I heard them play the Fourth Symphony of Tchaikovsky, and it was god-awful. The trumpet players were really bad. And there was a first trumpet player called, I think Horst Werner was his name. He was in East Germany, studied with Ludwig Güttler. And he was just no imagination and had a lot of, really closed the throat. And, I don't know, it was terrible. But anyway, I went backstage afterwards and was trying to be nice to the people, and Crespo said, "Hey, you got to come do the audition for the band." I said, "I've got a great job in Dusseldorf. People loved me there." And after, well, love me, I don't know. I started there on the 4th of November, and for Christmas they gave me my, what usually after 6 months or a year or whatever, they gave me my proboscite, which is trial time. They said, "Okay, you're in." And he was actually, this guy here, Wally Hilgers, he was playing in Dusseldorf at the time. He was one of my best friends in Dusseldorf. And that's why I brought him to this group called German Brass. Because this guy here he plays in the Berlin Philharmonic, he played in the Berlin Philharmonic, his name's Konrad Groth. He and Martin Kretzer, together with Gag and Crespo, Gag and Crespo, and a guy named Dieter Tschikewitz, they started a brass quintet in 1974 when they were studying in the Von Karajan Stiftung in Berlin. But Connie and Martin Kretzer, they were coordinate solo trumpets at the time of when Herbert von Karajan was, the famous Herbert von Karajan was conducting the orchestra, the Berlin Philharmonic. And therefore, they couldn't get away at the same time to do any tours. So they did one little tour in France, and that was it. And so basically, the next 5 years, the German brass, or what, I mean, it's a very ostentatious name to call yourself, students in Berlin call themselves, we're the German brass. Okay, well, that's the way people used to think back then, I guess. Anyway, but they didn't call it the German cause, they called it Das Deutsche Blechbläser Quintet, which is something, if you, on an international level, you can't, chew or even spit out. It's just, it's horrible. So when I came to, well, eventually I suggested the name German brass, and it came to a court case about the name and whatever, because the other guys wanted to throw Crespo out, who wrote 400 arrangements and pieces for the ensemble. But to make a long story short, those were the days. Anyway, it was interesting because I was just looking at this recently, and the photographer was the wife of the solo trumpet. His name's Konrad Ingroth. And it says German Brass Quintet, Das Deutsche Blechbläser Quintet, but there's 6 people there. Now, why is that? And then I thought, well, it's very interesting centered, but if you just fold it like that, you can see that really that was probably the intention of this guy here. Because eventually, it almost came to a punch-up because he was very rude to me and very arrogant, and I told him that. And it almost came to he wanted to have a fight with me. I just stood up. I said, I'm out of here. I don't need to work with you people. And later, they threw him out, and they wanted me back. But when the love is over, it's over. And we'd already done German Bach 300 or whatever at the time. But I actually did go back. But see, the Germans are continually competing all the time. They have real problems. They have real problems with respect. But this guy here, his name is Hannes Leubim. He was a great guy. He is a great guy. He still plays in the Bavarian radio and professor for trumpet in Munich. He comes from Freiburg. And at this time, he was in the North German Radio Symphony Orchestra, NDR. And when we played together in the quintet, he and I and Crespo and Wally, Valentino, Hilgers, and Wolfgang Gag, it was a great quintet. I'm not saying that Connie's not a very good trumpet player. He's an excellent trumpet player. You don't get to be solo trumpet in the Berlin Philharmonic because you're a lousy trumpet player. But it's a question of, I think basically like a lot of people that I know in the Berlin Philharmonic, they have Berliner Philharmonic-itis, which means they think they're the greatest. And as soon as you think you're the greatest, then it's bad news. It's been quite a problem. What I've experienced in life always, again and again, what it has to do with competition, and people do not have respect for other people's abilities. Most of the abilities that people have are gifts. And I'm going to talk about that kind of thing in the next YouTube. What a gift is really about, and about appreciation of your gifts and other people's gifts. So I hope you'll show in again with, as this continues, with the man with the horns, Richard Carson Steuart. And if you think I talk too much, just wait till the next YouTubes. I'll talk even more. But I might even show you some of my trumpets too. For example, over there I had a very nice flugelhorn all polished up for today. So, bye for now, and thank you.